Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Monday, September the 22nd, 2014. This is the Veterans Today Radio News Reports. I'm your host, Stu Webb, and today my special guest, the first hour of these 2 hours, is Gordon Duff, Senior Editor, Veterans Today. In the second hour, we'll be joined by Professor James Fetzer and Dr. Preston James. And Gordon, get right to you. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing as well as can be expected. Fall's coming in here in northern Ohio. It's absolutely beautiful outside. I wish I were in an independent Scotland instead of the enslaved nation it is, where I would be, I'd like to say be trout fishing. Actually, I'd probably be sitting in a bar somewhere. They call them pubs, I guess. But
I can't figure out, is this stupidity and ignorance of the people in Scotland not getting their independence?
It's a combination of things. We have some evidence of vote rigging. It wouldn't have been enough to make the difference. There's an indication that the government scared the hell out of an awful lot of people, and of course there's the issue. The government came in at the last minute and said, well, we're going to let you have these semi-autonomous anyway. You know, you don't have to vote for this. The government threatened to crash if they set up a currency, the government was going to crash their currency. The Scottish people were told that, well, you're not going to have any money because your oil's run out. You know, that's another lie. So there was every imaginable effort to quash this. And for you who doesn't know that, I'm obviously a Scot. You know, it's don't carry the accent. I can, after about 2 weeks, you start to develop it. It's a nasty one to get rid of, by the way.
Yeah, those monarchs. I mean, you have a very strange background out of Scotland, and so do I both. The House of Stuart, I think it is.
I am the senior member of the Clan Macduff. That is, and everything in Scotland is arguably, you know, the time of day. It's 2:00. It's only arguably 2:00. They argue about everything, but I'm the senior member of the current royal family of Scotland, if were they to have one. The son of a minor baron who was a Detroit auto worker and longtime member of the Communist Party, who, when family members with more, let's say, wherewithal, I grew up in what you would call semi-abject poverty, began calling my father Lord Lockhart. He went into an incredible rage. But family-wise, I have claim to 2 dukedoms and a couple other titles I have reasonable claim to. According to we have a family genealogist, and I am a Hatton Macduff, son of Lockhart. If you get into this stuff, I'm a Hatton Macduff from Hatton Castle, north of Aberdeen, son of Lockhart Duff, and that dates back to when the family were the Thanes of Inverness in the 1600s. But in Scotland, they keep records of everything, and you know, whatever Scottish royalty or whatever, and they take this stuff seriously in Britain, seriously to the point that if you want a title, you can buy one on eBay, mind you. You know, that's how seriously they take it. But once you've bought one on eBay, you know, you're a big deal. And while, you know, I spend a lot of time. I work in London. I have an office in London, and we have a facility. I work for an aerospace company, and we're London headquartered. So I have an office in the city, you know, right off the Strand, and we have facilities out in Essex. We have a little office building out there, which is let's say east of London, north and east, in an area, you know, north of the Thames estuary. Nice little town, you know, lots of potatoes grown and stuff like this. Good pub and restaurant in town. So we'll not mention the town because it doesn't need to be mentioned because there's too many people listening here. But nice, and I like it there. This is England, and I spent lots and lots of time there, and I, as a senior citizen, driving around on the wrong side of the road and going to boot sales, it's basically garage sales, as it were, and charity shops buying junk. And when you buy junk in Britain, you can at least get really, really old junk. And touristing around, I enjoy. The weather, not always that good. The food's absolutely abysmal. Beer's fine. I like the people there. And Scotland is not the most pleasant place on earth. I mean, it's beautiful. And the people are okay. Ireland is beautiful, and the people are amazing. The Scots are a serious group, okay, and who've been run through an awful lot. And all the worst or best thing I can say is I'm one of them, whatever it is. And you don't go into Scotland and push anybody around, nor in Ireland, by the way. No matter how big or tough you think you are, go start a fight in a pub, and somebody 135 pounds with boxing skills beyond anything you could imagine will pepper you until you're unrecognizable. Big surprise. It's the last place on earth you want to pretend you're a tough guy is Ireland. Have tremendous time in Ireland. Love the people there. And they've gone through a lot of economic downturns. They had seen a lot of boom. And now it's again, young people are leaving Ireland because they have no jobs here in the U.S. Young people are staying here because they have no jobs and they have nowhere to go. You certainly can't run easily to Canada, although I can see why people may have wanted to do that at some point. And Mexico's not a good decision. If you're in America and you don't have a job and you don't have prospects, and that's all of you guys out there, sorry about that, you're screwed. And I wish we hadn't done it to you. And
well, Gordon, you can't say you did it to him. It's this Israeli crime syndicate along with the Bush crime syndicate.
Well, stuff going on here. First thing I want to go after today is you guys always get, because this is radio and the FCC. I don't get to use the language that the Marine Corps language I would. I want to take a little shot at the daily cost. Now, the daily cost is supposedly a milquetoast website that gets a lot of political and economic things correct within its range. They do blame a lot of the right people for the right things. It gets progressive. Now, what we've found today, we've got this issue with Lee Wanta. Let me give some background to those, and I think all of you are going to be regular listeners here. I'd like to think we have new ones, and there'll be between 2 and 3 million of you minimally out there, so don't feel you're very alone if you're listening to this. Lee Wanta grew up in Milwaukee. He was a tool and die maker, 2-year degree in mechanical engineering. Lee Wanta, for whatever reason, and he's on with us periodically, fanatic patriot, fanatic Roman Catholic, absolutely. Funny guy. An intelligent and economic warfare expert, perhaps the best in the world in that area. And the mild-mannered and very decent Lee Wanta played in a larger world stage than almost anyone ever has, as working with William Casey and President Reagan. And at the time, I worked as part of this effort for one of the government agencies, and I will tell you at a much lower level than Mr. Wanta. It was a job to undermine the Russian economy and end the Cold War. And my own job was to arrange penetration of Russian banking through approaching, and I won't go too far into this, this is many, many years ago, through approaching the heads of banks in Belarus, what was then Leningrad, the Russian commercial bank there, Estonia, Latvia, and Ukraine, and to aid them and certain elements of what was then the KGB to cooperate with us in when things were going to hit the fan in Russia. We wanted to be able to turn capital around, and the way we bought our way in to the KGB initially was shipping in through Poland, Gdansk. And this is all wonderfully classified stuff for you guys. We began moving Marlboro cigarettes by the container load into Russia, initially in a trade program for high-end vodka, but then just plain smuggling. And in doing so, we had turned those individuals responsible for overseeing some telecommunications capabilities and certain border stations between Poland and Russia. Because, I'll tell you, a pack of Marlboro cigarettes decades and decades ago, you could buy Russia for one of those things. As far as American cigarettes go around the world, Marlboros are the worshipped brand. And the containers we were getting, and Marlboro didn't like this, by the way. This was coming out of a Greek-owned vending company in Detroit, and we were supplying those. And I remember sitting there with people from, I was representing an agency. The head of the Republican Party was with me, along with a Detroit nightclub owners. I remember who did the introduction with what you'd say were, you could see ties to organized crime if you wanted. But that kind of detail stuff, you know, you don't get to hear this stuff right away or all the time or whatever. But as to Wanta here, going back to the Wanta story, Wanta involved himself in a convoluted form of currency trading through a company out of Austria called Ameritrust, and working with the Chinese government and friends within Iran and friends within, among other places, Russia. Wanta accumulated $27 trillion. Now, when this story initially broke with on the internet with a number of people many years ago, you know, they saw 27 and thought it was all crazy. Wanta was went into hiding after the end of the Reagan administration. He had what we would call poor relationships with George Herbert Walker Bush. That would be generous. You can, if any of you can't figure out why that is, but he believed that money that Reagan wanted to put aside to pay off America's national debt and to finance the rebuilding of the United States for a century, the Bush family wanted to steal all of it. Wanta got a diplomatic post from an African country as ambassador, and moved to Switzerland. There he was kidnapped at the orders of the Bush family. His records and accounts seized. $27 trillion essentially disappeared. And Wanta was shipped back to the U.S. and put in prison, ostensibly for income tax violation in the state of Wisconsin, a charge now just totally shown to have been basically kidnapping and black site for Wanta, where he was tortured, beaten. I was introduced to Lee Wanta by a director of the Central Intelligence Agency who asked me to look after him some many years ago, saying that Wanta was a valuable patriot and that they needed someone that could make sure that he stayed safe and that no one hurt him. And that's the level of people, and they had to come to me because there wasn't anyone else inside government who could do this. And that I'm not sure I've told before either. Now, for those people who don't believe in Wanta, Stu can tell you about a telephone recording. Former Tennessee Governor Sundquist and the other person's name I'm blocking out called Lee Wanta on the phone a couple of weeks ago now, and left. And when Wanta didn't answer, they called in a conference call. They talked to each other while the recorder went on. This is where the daily cost part comes in. So excuse my convoluted stories, but I hope they have a delightful sort of flow to them in their own way. They left 6 minutes of recordings here. And Sundquist is a potential GOP presidential candidate, and now is announced, the party announced that he is going to head the Republican Party's effort toward introducing budget reform legislation after the upcoming elections. So this is the financial chief for the Republican Party and presidential candidate, who we have 6 minutes of recordings which are sent to the FBI and White House, and we dare anyone to prove that these aren't exactly what we say, asking for up to $30 billion worth of bribes, although they bid it down to $5 billion later. And those bribes, as we understand, and Stu, you can explain this to people at some point, were to be arranged through Cuba, handled by Bain Capital, and paid through banks in the Cayman Islands. Being done
That's
by
all true, Gordon. We've got John Stokes just joined us because he wants to throw some questions about Leo to you. But and that's all true.
Hey, John, go ahead.
Hey, Gordon, thanks. And by the way, I understand you guys had over 2 million listeners on last Wednesday's program, and it was had such a great impact, and it's such an important story. I replayed that whole audio tape of Leo's and your interview on Friday.
I want you to play it. I want you to play it every hour you're on the air. This is, by the way, directions to our 12 radio host here, of which John is a premier guy here. But I want this played because here's why. When we had an article put in the Daily Cost, and that's a minor lefty blog here, claiming that we fabricated this tape. Bull. The audio quality on this is perfect. Perfect audio quality, and we dare anyone. We have the original electronic recordings of this. They have been turned over to the FBI. Any news organization that wants this can have, and the ones we have are very high quality. They can look, you can absolutely voice print Governor Sundquist on here. Totally voice print him. He is heard all the time. He's on the Sunday talk shows all the time. Any idiot can do a voice print with their telephone now. So go ahead, go get our YouTube, which is high quality audio. Get one of his recordings, and he's got many on YouTube. Download the voice print app, and anybody can play cop. Now, if you want to play games with us, Daily Cost, you minor little chicken shit organization, now that we've exposed that you're not the Democratic Party at all, or the Republicans at all, that you're just another little organization, part of organized crime. Now, John, excuse me for that. I'm having one of those moments. Go ahead, John.
Okay. The tax liability that Leo talks about would be potentially $20 million of a windfall revenue for the Treasury.
$20 trillion.
$20 trillion. Now,
trillion.
I don't know what the law reads, but you would think they would pay off the national debt instead of going on a spending.
Let me explain national debt to people. Our national debt is sitting somewhere between $16.5 and $17 trillion last time I checked. But I also checked, here, heaven forbid, as an economist, I checked, and only $10.5 trillion of our national debt can be affirmed to actually exist, meaning that it's underwritten by by Treasury obligations that the U.S. has, our real national debt. What we found during the last few years, and this is during President Obama's watch here. Now, we had trillions of dollars disappear during the Bush administration. More than just the national debt. The U.S. economy was mortgaged for hundreds of trillions of dollars in what you would call toxic derivatives. And this is invisible debt created out of air to make sure that the American people would be impoverished till the end of time.
Okay, quick question. Now, as far as I know, there's no constitutional requirement that they take that money and pay off the debt, but let's assume they did, and we have zero national debt. What would happen to our economy, because all currency that's issued is debt-based? If we have no debt, what would happen to our currency?
The Federal Reserve, without the income, the Federal Reserve would collapse.
And a quarter of our budget, I understand, goes to pay the interest.
It would collapse on its own weight. There would actually have to be, the Federal Reserve would have to actually borrow from its member Rothschild banks in order to keep going. Now, for those who are unaware, and I don't think it's any of you guys anymore, the Constitution of the United States states, clear as a bell, that only Congress has the right to print money, coin money. The Federal Reserve, established in 1913 by Paul Warburg, and there's a book on this called The Creature of Jekyll Island, and nobody wants to read the whole thing anyway, so I'm not going to ask you to, but it's downloadable, and you can at least scan the thing, and that's all any of you are going to do in the real life, and that's frankly all I ever did with it.
You know, most people don't remember that the Titanic was sunk to kill the bankers that were on their way back to stop the Federal Reserve.
And that's a conspiracy theory, an attractive one, and quite possibly correct. Let me jump in the middle of this here and dump some things on you, John, while I've got you here. Now, Stu's holding some information that he's gotten from sources at the NSA that's very important. The best thing about Stu's information is this, that it checks out as real. Not everything that everybody gets is real. I manage the world's largest private intelligence agency. You want to see some of the people who work for me, take a look at the editorial staff of Veterans Today. Just look through the editorial board. If you want to see just some of the people who work for it. Some. And it goes a lot further than this. This is why when I think about being challenged by the ignorance of the daily cause, this is a joke, by the way, John. But Veterans Today, if it chooses, is less than 1 year from going nuclear. That Veterans Today itself has more nuclear weapons designers on staff at Veterans Today than the government of Iran. We have more. And I can guarantee you this, knowing what we know, it would be absolutely no trouble at all to buy what we know to be at least only 4 grams of plutonium. We could create a 1 kiloton nuclear weapon with that.
John, mute your Skype mic. Put your Skype mic muted. We're getting all kinds of feedback here. Please. Thank you, sir.
Who are you talking to?
I was talking to John Stokes. He had his mute or mic unmuted. I apologize. Gordon, go ahead.
Okay, but as a minor joke here, we have published on Veterans Today over the last 3 months plans for every 3rd and 4th generation nuclear weapon, nuclear demolition device, and energy weapon the U.S. has had in plans at its national laboratories. We have altered some of the math on them so that they can't be reproduced by others, but we have published the plans, which when altered are declassified technically, that no one else has, and they're all published on VT. If you want to go into VT Science Education or nuclear education. And I only want to apologize if you're not a physicist, you might find yourself a little lost. But I'm telling you, take the time and look at what we've done. We have simply proven that we minimally have the ability to build nuclear weapons if we choose. As a private veterans group, we have the ability to do this. Now, let me bring up an issue that's come before us that I want to get out right now, and it's a while we can. And for those of you who, love recording these things or listening up, it's listen up fun. This is probably 4 days ago.
Lord, please have a break right now.
Let's hope we come back after the break.
John, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Sorry about that. I had mute on because sometimes I get the little areas on the breaks actually will pour over the commercials, which is things like me asking, "Where's lunch? Is the mailman here yet?" Or "Can you make that dog stop barking?" Those dramatic things like that. This is a listen up. I'm going to try a 5-minute run. John Stokes, you still out there?
And I wanted, when you're done, I want to ask you a question about this made-for-TV boogeyman called ISIS.
I think I do a TV show on ISIS here. It's going to be in Arabic. So we'll be and I'll be lip synced in Arabic here on Al Alam Eastern Standard. For any of you who want to catch this at 3:20, I'll be on Al Alam Network for probably about a 6-minute interview on Iraq, and I'll be in English, but I think I'm usually lip synced. God, heaven forbid. I've got a translator, Askar, who does just a great job of that. People think that he is me in much of the Middle East because I'm lip synced by the same guy here. It's like Mexican soap operas. Anyway, this will be a fairly major leak. I'll preface this. This is a very major leak. A couple of days ago, the government in the Ukraine accused Russia of hitting their troops in Lugansk and elsewhere, particularly in the Lugansk airport, with tactical nuclear weapons. The Russians denied this, and ITAR TASS saying that, I'll paraphrase it, you should go back to school and learn the effects of nuclear weapons. Well, I have the photos, and I sent them to friends at the IAEA, and this is one of the groups that works with veterans today, and this is part of the United Nations. It's the International Atomic Energy Agency. I won't say that they're a VT affiliate now, but they're pretty close to that now. We're a good source of information for them because they use our private intelligence groups in doing their nuclear non-proliferation work, because we have people that watch airports and things like this. This is what private intelligence people do, just so you know, that if you walk to an airport, somebody working for our intelligence group, not VT, but our commercial, publicly traded company, which is an intelligence agency, will have you scan with. And I think we brought up before, if you want to know what you just ate for lunch, ask me later. I can probably tell you. It's just that nosing into everybody's business for no reason is wrong, and we don't do it. Anyway, we'll get down to where this went. The Russians may or may not have used 2 tactical nuclear weapons. We have people who said they did. Not my issue. We do know that a factory exploded in outside Donetsk 2 days ago. Now, the films of that are with the IAEA. We talked with them, and they said they have not yet received samples of from the site, and they're waiting on samples, or they were then. That their assumption was initially, and this is this is because people will tell me stuff they won't tell the press, obviously. But they said it looked to them as though the site were hit with a Lance missile. A Lance missile is a Cold War missile built by the United States with a range of about 100 miles, and it carries a small single nuclear weapon, and it's used for destroying. If you go Lance missile, you can look it up on anywhere you want to. I suggest you do that. It's fun. That they're for destroying airports and factories. Now, the only country still using Lance missiles and that has the capability of delivering those warheads is Israel. As a background, we have people, our airport watchers in Tbilisi, Georgia, said that a system may have been delivered in Tbilisi that could have, listen to the language here, the may and could have, okay? This, you're talking to intelligence people here. Could have been taken by trawler, escaping satellite oversight, and that area is under satellite watch continually. And the reason I'm mentioning satellite is this: when you land in Tbilisi, because satellite watching Georgia, in order to have the resolution you're seeing on some of these photos where people can see a tank, that takes the satellite down from 300 miles to only 10 square kilometers to get that degree of resolution, which means that none of those passes would be covering the Tbilisi airport. It is possible, not proven, that such a missile system could have been flown by an Antonov Freightliner, a huge airplane, largest in the world, into Tbilisi, which we have pictures of the plane. I've got the tail numbers. We've published those. We know that it's under military guard and doesn't belong there. Okay? Could have been taken by trawler back into Ukraine and used to nuke this factory. The IAEA says that they believe this is the weapon used and that a nuclear weapon was used, but they're waiting on samples to test. Either way, there was a Russian response to this. When Edward Snowden went to Russia, he brought the keys to the kingdom with him. That's why he's still there. Snowden will not be going to prison. Snowden will be living in a Moscow apartment with hot and cold, running anything he wants. And heaven forbid, as much as I don't find WikiLeaks to be real or credible, although we occasionally have gotten usable information, but mostly a lot of disinformation comes out of WikiLeaks. Snowden has not been the case. There's been some distraction there, but all of the Snowden leaks haven't gone to newspapers. They are far too classified, and they are spent differently. Snowden's highest classified leaks, you never see them. Why would somebody, be given asylum if all they to say is the NSA has been spying on the Germans? So, I spy on the Germans. Who trusts the Germans? Nobody trusts the Germans. Ask the Jews about that. They don't trust the Germans. Ask them why. They'll tell you. They'll tell you all day long. But Snowden had a number of things. On June 4th, I was sent my first portion of the 2003 Department of Energy 9/11 report, citing that the World Trade Center was destroyed by nuclear weapons made with materials that were taken from the Hanford, initially built at the Hanford reactor, and materials stolen from the Pentax facility, where these warheads were taken to be reprocessed into fuel, and instead were stolen. Now, I won't say that it mentions the brother of President George Herbert Walker Bush, an individual who may have died in 2010, as being responsible, in addition to Victor Bout, an international arms smuggler, and the Israeli government, or that the weapons were smuggled through Houston, they were stored in a fertilizer plant that was blown up, or taken through the Canary Islands. I won't say that I have photographs and records of all of this, but I do.
Let me jump in here just 1 second for all of our listeners who aren't up to speed on this stuff, and correct me if I'm wrong, Gordon. Every nuclear explosion or device has a DNA fingerprint on it. We can tell where it was made, how much plutonium, uranium was in it, and the country of origin. Is that correct?
Yes, and this is the issue for now. We're gonna show how able danger comes into this. Able danger, the danger investigation began after the IAEA cited the Oklahoma City bombing as a nuclear event, that a small tactical nuclear weapon was used. And said, how can you prove that? That there is no way you can make a ammonium nitrate fuel oil, ANFO they call them, an ANFO weapon does not ever, ever, ever leave a crater. Cannot leave a crater. Only a nuke will leave a crater. ANFO weapons don't have that kind of explosive capability. It's not even close. So it's cited it as a nuke, and if you were to want to find out what another nuclear explosion would look like, you would look at the explosion of the Khobar Towers in Saudi Arabia. It will look identical, and that was a nuclear explosion as well. And
Gordon, if I could jump in here, I wrote 3 pieces on Oklahoma City. I didn't do the conclusion yet because there's some other vital information that I need to get up there, but I did point the finger on who it was and who did it and whose involvement. And it's ironic because there's a document in that third story about Jesse, the attorney, suing him right now over his brother's death, and it points a finger right back at, and I'd say who it is, Mark Hoslaw of the FBI in Denver. Let it happen.
I have the names. Stu, I have the names of the people directly involved in doing it. I have them. They're in the able danger documents that the Russians just sent us. Fantastic. And we're going to be publishing on this. Whoever has the guts to do this. But able danger is an investigation started by the Clinton administration. As soon as it started, Monica Lewinsky, who's listed in the able danger documents, by the way, is listed as a Mossad agent or Mossad asset, more appropriately, was put into the White House to blackmail President Clinton, who we'll say used poor judgment. At least he wasn't caught bringing rent boys in like the Bush family does, but poor judgment just the same. And that this whole thing was done over stopping this investigation of Oklahoma City. This investigation was initially run by John O'Neill for the FBI and Roland Carnaby. John O'Neill and Roland Carnaby, both those people are dead. The investigation also had an office in the Pentagon where it investigated the theft of nuclear weapons from the Pentax facility with information it received from the IAEA, and that facility, and the theft of over $2 trillion from the defense budget. Now, this is a facility that was struck by a airliner, missile, whatever you want to say, bomb on 9/11. Looks to me like a Tomahawk missile hit it. We are told within the documents that the story that Dmitry Kolozov had been given about the attack by a Granite missile is disinformation, that it was a Tomahawk. And that is in these documents, mentioning Kolozov, by the way, who's a political prisoner in Thailand right now, and a good friend of mine, excellent person, who has done a lot of excellent work and who has our continued unabated support. Though not everything he says is correct, so much of it has been that he's just an outstanding individual. The report cites that able danger, now this is why we talk about able danger. Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Schaefer, the U.S. Army, went on Fox with Judge Napolitano, reporting what he knew about able danger, that it involved why the CIA didn't act on information they had about a group of Saudis later known as the, quote, hijackers, unquote. We have no reason to believe that anything Schaefer did was wrong and that he only gave information he had. We have DIA files tied to an investigation inside Afghanistan on Schaefer, which are based on rumor and innuendo and don't necessarily need to be made public, although we have them. I think they're libelous. And I also don't know that they're true, although they're DIA files. I don't that they attack him. I don't know that to be the case. I have found since that time that Mr. Schaefer and a Mr. Peterson are working for a small think tank that is very mysteriously funded now, and that Mr. Schaefer has attached himself to Alex Jones and InfoWars, still putting out this contained version of Able Danger. I will tell you what the real Able Danger says. The real Able Danger was established after the Oklahoma City bombings to investigate a group that included a rogue organization within the CIA, Israeli and Saudi intelligence, and that Able Danger begins, the pre-report begins by listing the CIA, and the CIA was also part of the Able Danger investigation, I will tell you. The CIA has a left hand and a right hand, and that's what compartmentalization leads to. But that the CIA, the Mossad, and Saudi intelligence were operating inside the U.S. as terror cells, and that these three organizations had called themselves a code name, and that code name describing the CIA, Mossad, and Saudi intelligence is Al-Qaeda. If any of you want to stop for a second here about this, that Al-Qaeda is a code name for an organization of CIA, Saudi, and Israelis working together within the U.S. The investigations of Able Danger went this direction. They investigated the theft of nuclear material. They investigated the Department of Energy, stating that a high-ranking individual within the U.S. Department of Energy, perhaps the director of the Department of Energy himself, was an Israeli agent and made available to Victor Bout and those working with him, which could have been the brother of a president of the United States, and the Prime Minister of Israel, mind you, himself, along with the Prime Minister of South Africa, at that time, was directly involved. Okay? That
now,
this is
Gordon, the recent alleged beheadings, and we can get into that if you want to, but that's not pulling our chain sufficient enough. For the last month, Fox News and CNN and all the others have been beating the drum beats to continue this war on terror, fund more terrorists, bomb Iraq. But the American public, from my reading, is not quite on board yet.
Yeah, but
how?
John,
but they're going to. But they have the new capabilities in our cities. Are they ready to pull that trigger anytime soon? You think to make people?
Let's go on and get John. We have to get this out here. Is good or bad? However, I do this. Frankly, while any of us are still able, and there's an audience, and it's being recorded, we hope. Toward this, and by the way, where the hell was I anyway? Here.
You were talking about the terrorist Able Danger, and you were going that direction.
Okay. The Able, and my God, I've actually. Why did I go in front of the computer, and why did I just go in and pull up the report the Russians sent me? I guess I can do that. I'm pacing around my dining room here, and I can just simply drag it up here. I've been emailing it to myself to keep it flopping around. Okay, with a do not resend on it here. Let's open some documents.
You're talking about Victor Bout a minute
ago. Let me start through what I have. I get this out quickly. It lists as the people who planned the destruction of the World Trade Center. And the 9/11 attacks were partially done, we had listed as nuclear blackmail, but also to stop the Able Danger investigation, which covered the theft of over $2 trillion and the theft of 350 nuclear warheads. Going back to where I was a second ago, now that the brain's working again, the caffeine has gone there and found a brain cell that hasn't exploded yet, The Department of Energy, this is critical here, and we're busy doing this detail stuff. So the Department of Energy was supplying information on nuclear pits, that's the center of a warhead, that were being sent to the Pentex facility in Amarillo, Texas, to be made into fuel. Some of these pits were configured in such a way that they could be remanufactured into nuclear weapons. Some of them had deteriorated to an extent and were of a configuration that if someone tried to remanufacture them, that'd be the last thing they ever did. So these pits that were taken out of there. If you went into a nuclear weapons reprocessing facility, a nuclear fuel facility, and you thought you could just go in and just grab stuff off the shelf, give me 50 of those plutonium egg things. Okay. If you don't have detailed, specific, exceedingly classified information about the makeup, the chemical makeup and design of those weapons and their current condition of each one of those 350 pits that was taken, you couldn't take them because it would be an utter and absolute waste. You couldn't make anything out of them. They'd be junk. They began cherry picking, and this was to rebuild the Israeli nuclear arsenal after the Dimona reactor crashed somewhere between 1988 and 1994. We don't have the exact date. And one of our guys was in the reactor there on behalf of the U.S. government trying to find out what had happened within that reactor. Colonel James Hankey, then attaché to Israel, editor of Veterans Today, was in there with a specialized secret detector trying to find out about investigating this specific issue. But the reactor had crashed. Now, they were no longer able to produce weapons. Instead, they could just take them off the shelf in the U.S., and the only way they could do that is with the help of a high-level mole within the Department of Energy that could tell them which ones to take. This is absolutely vital. And this is probably one of our biggest national secrets ever. And if you want to think of why, talk to somebody in law enforcement. You got a friend in the FBI. Explain to them how this would work, how important this is. And I'm going to run back. We walk back into the dining room again, as I'd remembered this, and we're going to go back to the makeup of the group involved in running this organization, which, by the way, is responsible for the Franklin scandal. This group controls members of Congress through running gambling money through Las Vegas and Macau, through running prostitution and rent boy groups across the U.S. and through Washington. It runs a massive blackmail organization run out of Cuba. And Stu has confirmation from the NSA on this organization. This organization handles its cash through Bain Capital, and the world's largest retail chain aids them in doing this through banks that it owns. But this is a massive money laundering operation, and Stu will be able to report on things that apply to this. But,
Gordon, we've got probably a minute or two before a break comes up. I want you to continue, but I want you to hold on and get all this out to us right after the break as well. But go ahead.
I'm going through the list here of, we have the first director of Homeland Security was listed as the head of what we would call Al-Qaeda, the real
Chertoff.
Osama bin Laden.
Was this Chertoff?
I'm not saying the name.
I am.
With the real Osama bin Laden was the director of Homeland Security. Assisting him was a United States attorney who had handled all of the 9/11 investigations.
Hold on, Gordon. There's a break. We pick it back up, folks. We get an earful from Gordon Duff, Senior Editor, Veterans Today. And we're back, folks. This is second hour, Monday, September the 22nd, 2014. This is Veterans Today Radio News Reports. I'm your host, Stu Webb, and this show is sponsored by John Stokes, the on the Micro Effect, The Edge, and John's on with us. I have Gordon Duff on. We'll be being joined by Professor James Fetzer and Dr. Preston James. But John, real quick, and Gordon, why we got John on here, we kind of got a problem with Skype here, overloading on the server. John, fire your question up real quick for Gordon, real quick, and Gordon, answer John's question, and then I want you to get back to what you were talking about in detail with this report, if you would, please.
Well, thank you, Stu. It's kind of weird being a guest on your own program.
You're the one that sponsors this show Monday and Wednesday, and we appreciate this, John, believe me. You've been a Veterans Today truth warrior and the first to be a Veterans Today news broadcaster or radio broadcaster, and join the team with us. You're part of the family, and at any time you want to join us, you may.
Mr. Duff, this ISIS, L-I-S-I-S, whatever you want to call it, is purely a creation of our government and the Saudis and Israel. And lately,
it's a creation of the exact group we're talking about, of what we used to call codename Al-Qaeda, which is the CIA, Mossad, and Saudi intelligence run ISIL, ISIS. Yes, they do. And the group of people that we're talking about initially here are still running it. The individuals that we've been listing are the people who run this organization, and this is why the government of Iraq announced today that if Americans wanted to come on the ground, that they have no interest in having anyone there, because with the involvement of these three organizations, there's nobody they can trust. Welcome to that world.
Well, this latest invasion of Iraq and Syria, it's really not getting the knee-jerk reaction that they want from the American public. The beheading, yeah, we've seen those. Those are probably fake, too. So it looks like they're setting us up for this fake boogeyman to do something very catastrophic to America to make us blindly go into another conflict. Am I right or wrong on that? And I'll listen off air.
That's why I'm saying what I'm saying today, because we have an indication that, and frankly, it would have happened already, that there is a nuclear threat against the United States. The Russians are aware of that. There has been an exchange, or not, because I'm not going to box with the Russians if they're going to give me information. I'm not going to trash them, and I've never trashed somebody that's given you a couple of birthday presents. But the Ukrainian war went nuclear, and if you don't think so, well, certainly if you're a fan of the government in Kiev, they say it has. And they're the ally of the United States. So the government allied of the United States says they're in a nuclear war in Ukraine. And if you want to take that stance here, whatever stance that is, like you're a daily cost reader, then go ahead and take that stance, because it supports us. Any rational or truthful stance here only supports what we have to say, and nothing else. And this is just a continuation. It was a horrible mistake when the U.S. had started to hand-feed weapons into al-Nusra, ISIL, and had named them as Al-Qaeda, that they burned out the name Al-Qaeda, because that was a good boogeyman name to use. And the boogeyman, the dead since 2001, Osama bin Laden, he was never Osama bin. The real Osama bin Laden, as we know him, or the head of Al-Qaeda, was the director of Homeland Security. That's who ran Al-Qaeda, with the help of a U.S. attorney, cited with the investigation, with the head of a Canadian distilling family, very well known, extremely wealthy, the wealthiest family in Canada. This individual, with the help of a governor of New York, governor of New York, with a mayor of New York City, a police commissioner of New York City, were involved in the planning of 9/11, according to these documents. A New York City mayor, a New York City police commissioner, a U.S. attorney, the then president of South Africa, a prime minister of Israel, and the names go on, and a White House counterterrorism chief. The names that aren't in these documents, Rumsfeld, Ashford, Cheney, and Bush, are not listed in the documents.
Could I throw some names out there, or would that be appropriate? Giuliani, Curry, police chief, Clark.
Not while I'm on the air. Not while I'm on the air.
Okay, I did it. Okay.
Not while I'm on the air. Okay?
Okay.
There are classification levels on this that are not legal to list. I can only say what's there and not there. And the level, when you hit Q on something, it doesn't go on the radio. Let's talk about 9/11, the Pentagon. The officers of the Pentagon contained a small G2 military group, Criminal Investigation Service. That was hit under the call sign of Able Danger. They were investigating missing nuclear weapons. This group under JCS, and this is for you guys in government, this was a JCS UDP command, okay? For those of you who work in government, you'll know what I'm talking about. That 35 out of 50 key investigators were killed in that attack. And they were called into the office where the missile or plane or whatever you want to say was to hit. For an emergency general staff meeting, I'm reading this, that was running late. Okay? Now, you just saw this, I think, done on a couple of TV shows, including the show Homeland. They ran the same plot. 35 of 50 investigators from Able Danger were killed on 9/11, along with John O'Neill, and later Roland Carnaby was murdered by a Mossad agent in Houston, Texas, who was also a Houston police officer. And I have that in the original, the notes, and these are the amended notes after the original 9/11 report on 2003, the real 9/11 report, not the cover-up. There's a mention here of a General Meyer, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff at 9/11. But here's a more curious thing, and we'll just touch on this because this has got a nasty classification here. I'll just tell you what's in here, and you take it where you want to. That people they were protecting in southern Manhattan from this nuclear attack on 9/11, the CEOs of key firms in the working in the World Trade Center were invited to a private golf outing, and in reality were kept secure on an Air Force base. And that golf outing was sponsored by Warren Buffett. We're having a moment of silence here.
That's significant. Keep going, Gordon.
we can't pretty much keep going here on this. I cannot publish this document. I can tell you that this investigation, the investigation into the theft of nuclear weapons, is being handled by a federal grand jury in Houston, Texas, that is still seated. There are a number of people currently in witness protection. There are piles and piles of witness statements involving people who had driven nuclear weapons in refrigeration trucks full of cows, mind you, with nuclear weapons in boxes on the floor underneath the carcasses. Refrigeration, how nuclear weapons were sorted inside a refrigeration facility in Texas, transferred to a fertilizer plant, moved to the port of Houston. People involved have all made statements. There are truck drivers in witness protection, people that cut up cows that are in witness protection and have been there, some of them, for years and years tied to this. We have listings, and this is tied to something you'd come to me earlier about President Obama blocking money laundering. The money laundering he has been blocking for a couple of months is the most dangerous thing he's ever done, and it's tied to these issues. It's tied to Guanta and his money. It is tied to massive payoffs of people involved in 9/11 and subsequent financial crimes and the huge thefts out of the Pentagon. And it's why all these people in the Pentagon were killed. All these investigators. This is, as I've said, they called an emergency staff meeting, got the investigation staff on able danger in a room, and crashed a Tomahawk missile into them, killing 35 of the investigators and destroying computers and records. And of course, the records should have been certainly stored on centralized servers. These are not standalone computers with hard drives in them. Not in the Pentagon. The Pentagon has stacks of multiple secure mainframes, and yet they claimed that these records were destroyed when the computer terminals tied to the mainframe were destroyed. These things not only don't have a drive on them, you can't even put a flash drive in one of them.
Can I throw something out in the way of a name of a corporation that was in charge of those records, or should I keep my mouth shut?
No, you can say that.
How about Dynacorp doing the records on the 3 point whatever it was $trillion, 2 point some odd trillion dollars missing?
I can't even admit I work with those guys. You're going to get me hanged here. Okay. Other things we can see, these were Navy people. Warren Buffett, we mentioned that. General Myers helped sequester key people during 9/11.
Blackjack Myers, yes.
Okay. Let's talk about during 9/11, and we have confirmed this, is that the Israeli teams around New York City were under investigation and were being watched. The dancing Israelis were living in New Jersey, and they were being watched by an FBI team under the command of Special Agent Mike Dick. That Mohammed Atta was seen meeting with them. The mastermind of 9/11, supposedly the imaginary box cutter, pancaking building guy. There were arrests made. The only ones that were publicly held were the dancing Israelis, who were seen as part of it, and they were being investigated for smuggling nuclear weapons into the United States.
That was urban moving systems, correct?
Urban moving. There were other groups under investigation. One group was arrested on the George Washington Bridge. They had planted explosives at one of the, and let me get back in and read this, but where the cables connect into the ground. And they were arrested and released later to what was supposedly an FBI agent, but was actually an Israeli Mossad agent authorized to carry FBI ID. The George Washington Bridge was a cable stay room on the New Jersey side. The arrest was made by the New Jersey state troopers, who released the Israeli team, a 3-man team, and this was reported on CNN, and Dan Rather did the report on CBS, and I have this on my YouTube. Blow the suspension cables in the cable stay room, and the bridge would have come down. The bridge, there were 2 more bombs to be used on the Lincoln and Holland tunnels. Electronic warfare jammers were placed on several high-rise buildings in Fort Lee around the bridge, and down the block by the group themselves. They planted the jammers, by the way, the urban moving, but the dancing Israelis planted the jammers. 2 of the RF jammers were recovered, and they're still in evidence, and they're being held in right now in Houston, Texas. The jammers. Their job was to jam the Port Authority and the New York City Fire Department radios. Remember the discussions about how the fire department radios didn't work? They didn't work because the Israelis used jammers to jam their radios. I could tell you the company that made them, actually, but that's neither here nor there because they're friends of mine. There was no radio blackout issue. The radios didn't fail. They were jammed. The New York office of the FCC recovered these jammer devices using their detection equipment and detection teams. The Federal Communications Commission recovered these. Israeli teams tried to take out the George Washington Bridge, were arrested by, and this was we have the recording of the arrest. We have the tape of this arrest being made, where the New Jersey State Police arrested them. And during one of the tunnel arrests, NYPD, this is on 9/11, phoned me, a detective there, because I worked there periodically for a U.S. agency, phoned me and indicated they'd made an arrest where a truck, they didn't say Urban Movers, but I can assume that now, seeing that there was a roadblock going into the tunnel, they tried a turnaround. The New York police, heaven forbid, though their commissioner later went to prison, and I was told, ordered the release of these individuals. Weapons and a bomb to destroy the tunnel was recovered in a vehicle, which may or may not have been an urban moving vehicle with Israeli citizens in it, heading into the Lincoln Tunnel. Similar to the same, I don't know about whether the ones from the Holland Tunnel are arrested or not, but there are records of a plot being foiled. I don't have evidence of an arrest, but there was an arrest, and these were released to the New York City Police Commissioner. They were released to and never seen again. This is what we have factual that we can get out, and at this point, people can do with what they want. But, I'm processing material. We can all look for backup on this, and we want to thank Edward Snowden. We want to thank our friends in the varying intelligence agencies of Russia for their cooperation and their good sense of humor in getting this information out to us, and for supplying us information that answers so many questions. There's nothing worse than running around half-cocked. What we found out, though, is so much of what we had learned over all these years that we've been right, not that we've been wrong. We didn't know the scope of this. We didn't know that, I can add, that the AIPAC spy scandal was part of Able Danger, that the investigation when Todd was part of was part of this, that Richard Holbrook's part in passing nuclear information was part of this. And I'm gonna shut up right now.
Gordon, I have Professor James Fetzer on here, and I have Dr. Preston James, and I'm going to open up the mic because I'm going to let them jump in here and pop questions at you. We need to get all this out. This is probably the hottest show on 911, and the information you just released is, you just tied it together. I'm aware of a few things, but nothing like this. But before I let those two jump in here, I want to throw out something that I got in the way of information that you brought up 2 or 3 times about Leonard Millman running ISIS. Now, he's hiding out.
You're not allowed to say Leonard Millman, remember, because people don't identify the name.
Okay. The Cuban money launderer that the presidential candidate, Mitt Romney, went down and saw quite a few times, still does with Bain Capital. Now, the Israelis, should we say. Now, they're the ones behind this ISIS, Isli. They're trying to take over all the oil in the Middle East. They're doing the production of the oil in Iran, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iraq, and Syria. And they're dropping the oil prices. Everybody's seen about $8 to $10 drop in the past 6 weeks. They're forcing the oil prices down, which they're manipulating. And they're going to force it down by $5 to $8 more a barrel to intentionally break. And they're controlling Russia's production as well, Yukos oil. And they plan on squeezing Russia and squeezing out Saudi Arabia and Iran eventually, Saudi Arabia, but Iran in particular, and run their economies. Is this about true?
This is accurate information that you have, yes, and especially that all of this has been run through Cuba. It's absolutely vital that and this is what particularly landed this on me, that all of these payoffs including the stuff involving Unquist, all of this. These guys are all going in and out of Cuba. They're flying there from Toronto. They were issued diplomatic passports by the Israelis, and they're flying out of Veracruz, Mexico. And these guys are in and out of Cuba. It's their party place, protected by the Castro government. But little do they know that Mexican intelligence had penetrated this, and everything they've ever done in Cuba is on video. Everything. Welcome, guys, to that one.
Now, Professor James Fetzer, you have any? Fire away, Dr. Preston James. It's open mic with Gordon Duff.
Well, I expect Preston is just as in awe as am I at the very thought that we might still be able to get a legal hold of some of the perps involved in 9/11. I think Gordon has done a masterful job of laying out some of the most important evidence of Israeli complicity in New York City with the Lincoln Tunnel, the Holland Tunnel, the George Washington Bridge. Imagine the dimensions of the catastrophe had they been successful in taking those access routes into Manhattan out. I mean, it boggles the mind. So I'm simply adding my congratulations to Gordon for this further information. He's been doing a wonderful job on Veterans Today of laying out basics about the use of nukes on 9/11. All of us can benefit from their study, and it seems to me that we have an overwhelming case that implicates the principal perps here, including the CIA, the neocons, and the Department of Defense and the Mossad.
Jim, were you able to catch the first hour?
Yes, I was.
Preston caught it, and I did not, Gordon. I'm sorry to say.
Jim, what you'll hear, the first hour was entirely on 9/11. You did hear about the Pentagon attacks and how the investigators were all called into a staff meeting where none of their higher-ups, which included General Myers, by the way, showed up.
No, you're absolutely right. I discussed that before early on, Gordon, when I noticed that of the list of an alleged 125 casualties at the Pentagon, this is exclusive of the plane that didn't crash there, that some 36 of them were financial analysts, accountants, budget experts, which said to me what was going on was that Rumsfeld had used the occasion of announcing the $2.3 trillion missing from the budget to get them all together. I can hear him summoning the section chief to get them all together in the West Wing, all their documents and records to be taken out. And what I loved about the additional details you were providing is that that could not possibly have destroyed the records of the mainframe because they were using dumb terminals to connect to it. So that's a fascinating revelation all by itself.
I might throw out something. Catherine Fitz, who was the HUD secretary, sent in to clean up HUD when I caused the 1989 HUD scandal and the independent prosecutor appointment, Arlen Adams. She was the one that found this, Gordon. I think we can back up all the records on this without a problem.
Well, one of the things that right after 9/11, we'll say a retired former CIA director came to me to tell me about how many of his friends were killed among the financial analysts there. Now, a CIA director doesn't go to lunch continually or go out and play golf with financial analysts and accountants, does he?
As a rule.
And I will add, for those of you who love monitoring my email, by the way, you'll find a nice email from this individual to me earlier today on innocent things, but just a social how you doing thing here. And if you love reading people's email, just realize you're reading email from people that you'll never have an adequate security level actually to read the email. But Fetzer, and I can't, because everybody here is named Jim at any given time, but Chip will know more about these computer systems than anyone, and Chip has worked on them. If not, we can certainly go to, we do have on BT, a former head of Pentagon counterterrorism is a VT affiliate, and would be more than happy to fill any of this in. And Mike Harris could arrange for that. He's listening right now, by the way, and is capable of phoning in if he will. But I will point out that I was working with Pentagon counterterrorism, kind of at the time anyway, so for whatever reason. But say hi to the guys that were there, all of whom were smart enough to retire and get a real job. Thank you very much. And for Fetzer, when you go through the first hour, you will find a lot more detail in the first hour. Many things we brought up.
Excellent, Gordon. I look forward to hearing it.
Gordon, we've got a break coming up. Hold on right there, please. We'll be right back with Gordon Duff, Professor James Fetzer, and Dr. Preston James. I know Doc's on here and didn't want to fire some questions as well, Gordon. And we're back, folks. It's the last half an hour of Veterans Day Radio News Reports. Now we have Gordon Duff and James Fetzer and Dr. Preston James. And Dr. Preston James, you want to fire some questions? You've been listening to this whole program.
Well, I just want to commend Gordon Duff, senior editor at BT, for doing an outstanding job. He's given us so much information that clears up so many questions. And I've been told by my sources that within the last few years that World Zionism, which many know as this combination, they call it the combination crime syndicate between the Bush crime cabal and the International Zionist crime syndicate working out of Israel and London, that basically it's about overform. There's many vector forces coming in at them all over the world, the BRICS, New Development Bank, all these various forces, they've been exposed. The same thing is going to happen to them that happened to South Africa. If this is true, and you would know that, Gordon, how desperate are these people if they're cornered, and are they capable of setting off more nukes inside American cities?
I think we're very much in danger, and this is why there's a couple of things going on here. I want to secretly thank the secret people within the Russian government who have been brave enough, angry enough, and arrogant enough to send me these materials. I want to thank Edward Snowden, who I didn't necessarily believe in, for bringing these materials out of the U.S. and making them available. I'd like to explain to the public out here that none of the real leaked materials, there is nothing that ever hits a newspaper. That these materials would have gone to the New York Times first, absolutely, or to CNN, if they had shown any willingness or interest to handling any of them. And that this includes, I can't even say what it includes without causing people problems. On the other hand, we have witnesses out here. We've had a number of people come forward over a period of time. I will tell you that all of them are either afraid for their lives. Within the U.S., there are many people within the U.S. that are under gag orders from federal judges who have all of the information on 9/11 and 9/11 is just one part of house cleaning and blackmail and a massive case of lightning, let's say, unnamed type of lightning, insurance fraud. But 9/11 was just a big payday, killing off as many people as possible. 9/11 was like the last scenes of the first Godfather movie, where they're going through the christening ceremony and they go out and kill all the family's enemies. Well, they did that and made a $7 billion payday. And then after that, they put in place organizations. They took one of the primary plotters of 9/11, put him in charge of the Department of Homeland Security, where all investigations could be quashed immediately. All of the criminal cases tied to 9/11 went to a U.S. attorney who was involved in the planning of 9/11. As far as the most powerful lobbying groups in Washington and think tanks were all involved in the planning of 9/11. And every time I get one of these documents, there are lists of payoffs in it. of what it takes to silence people. You figure out who you are and what it would take and what your life is. And when someone, and here's the figure that's used continually. You pay someone off by giving them in no more or no less than $20 million, and think why that figure is used. They went through Congress, they went through department after department, through the FBI, the Department of Justice, and gave people $20 million. All of this accounting was done in Cuba, and it was all handled through the Caymans. So you've got all these people now sitting there, hundreds of them, literally, that know everything about the war on terror, 9/11, and this is the leadership of phony Al-Qaeda. All of them have $20 million in banks in the Cayman Islands, and President Obama has just cut them off from their cash. Welcome to that world, guys.
Hey, Gordon, I love that. You know that in 1997, when the Israelis, the Denver connection, was taken before that M&L grand jury, and they were all fined, and the Cuban boy was fined $80 million and never went to jail, and the bank bailout scamster was fined like $5 million, and his counsel and Daddy Bush's counsel, and it went on and on and on. The magic number of all those public officials, FBI agents, U.S. attorneys, judges, Mayor Federico Peña, everybody was only 1.5 million. So I guess that shows those little low-level whores, should we say, compared to the big boys, huh?
I'm going to be in Dubai probably the end of next week. These guys there, $1.5 million they spend on a weekend.
I know that's pocket change to them. But this was the number of FBI agents and like Mark Hoslaw and all the others that run the trolls in America, should we say, and covered up Oklahoma City. That was their numbers, and that was all discussed and fined out and cleared out, and then later sealed under national security.
Well, I'm glad to see that the payoffs has gone up, and simply if you look at it. And using this figure here, take either of these figures, and let's figure that you're divorced twice, you've got 3 kids, you've got kids in school. Hell, I've got children and grandchildren in college right now. Okay, I mean, you think about what that costs, and somebody comes to you with money, and you've got a house payment and this and that, and $1.5 million will buy you. Well, in Washington D.C., it'll buy you a moderate average home, frankly, But the question is, how do you hide? How do you handle this money? Figure out what you have to do this. And of course, what it takes to be able to do this is they don't just handle the money for you; they launder the money for you, and they launder it because not only do they have banks, but they control the IRS. They control the Treasury Department. They're the ones who make sure that you never get audited, that nobody looks through your accounts for the money, that none of it's ever seen, that you can bring money in and out of the country when you want, because they're the guys who run that for you. So not only do they give you the money, they make sure you get to keep it. And, of course, if anything is wrong, they can always get you. And I'll tell you, coming forward to testify means absolutely nothing, because you will never live to see a judge. A Houston police officer will pull you over and shoot you, or you'll be in a small plane like Mike Connell, the guy that made Karl Rove angry, and it'll plow into a sandbank somewhere, and somehow you'll be dead, or you'll have a mysterious heart attack, or you'll get a case of very strange induced cancer.
Or you might ever roll over 3 times on your head on a concrete barrier at 60 miles an hour in your 1-ton van like I had, right?
Oh my God! And then or me sitting in a hospital in Southwest England, failing to die from what should have been enough to kill 2 people with shellfish toxins, and not knowing, of course, that I've got an adrenal gland the size of a softball. There is no one. There is, and this is. I'm not giving anybody any hope, and this is for Jim Fetzer out there. There's no way. And we've collectively put together so much powerful information. And what's critical is when Jim Setzer went neutron bomb. None of us had that. That turned out to be the case. I'll also add that the Lance missile, and this was talked about from the first hour when we were talking about the factory explosion in Donetsk, that the Lance missile was designed to carry the neutron bomb. And neutron bombs are in, and varying forms of them, 1 and 2 stage. Neutron and EMP bombs are available in large quantity and is in configurations as small as 1 ton of TNT. 1 ton. That there are weapons out there that produce no radiation, and that there is never a large explosion. We have so many hundreds and hundreds of tons of plutonium that we consider it worthless scrap. These bombs can be made out of, right now, and this is why we've been publishing nuclear information here on VT, these bombs can be made out of low-grade fuel and nuclear waste. We don't have to anymore. There's no 98.8% plutonium or pure 235 used. These weapons are made out of simple nuclear waste. We have found ways to get depleted uranium to go critical. Anything is possible now. Science has advanced this far, and this is why we've published so much of this. I'm going to stop talking and let other people get some time in.
Jim Fetzer, fire to questions. I know you've got some for Gordon.
I think Preston's the one who's been shortchanged, Stu. I would give Preston the opportunity to get a few words in here. I think Gordon has just been blowing us away. I mean, it's just such a marvelous synthesis of what we need to know about 9/11.
Well, Jim, let me just jump in for a second. What I've got in front of me, and this is what came out earlier, I'm going to try to publish on this, but I have a group of documents from the Russian government tied to the Able Danger investigation. And what we had pointed out in the first hour, Jim, is that Able Danger was an investigation of 3 terror cells operating in the U.S. under the name Al-Qaeda, and they consisted of the CIA, Saudi intelligence, and the Mossad combined. Used the code word CIA to cover their operations, which were investigated by Able Danger. Those operations began. They came to the surface during the nuclear bombing of the Murrah building in Oklahoma City. And the second act past that was the Monica Lewinsky attempt to blackmail President Clinton and have him stop the investigations. And we can follow this on. And 9/11 just fits in the middle of it. It's not all about 9/11. 9/11 is in a perfect end-to-end pattern of activities that, frankly, we're watching going on in Iraq right now with the same 3 organizations, the Saudis, the CIA, and Mossad, and their new version of Al-Qaeda called ISIL or ISIS, ISIL, whatever you want to call it. It's just the same thing, the same game, and the information that Stu's brought up about the manipulation of fuel prices.
Doc, you want to jump in?
Well, this is astounding information. I'm really shocked by all of it, and it all rings so true. It answers so many questions. But I'm still concerned, how vital is it that people share this information with their friends and get people coming to VT to read these articles? Is that going to assist us in blocking these efforts for these people to continue using nuclear blackmail against the United States? And how serious is the danger that they may just go off and stage another huge city buster type event?
All I could do is put enough code words inside this broadcast where people can listen and figure that we're a conspiracy theory entertainment show of some kind. If you understand nuclear physics or you're involved in high-level investigative services or an intelligence service, you'll very, very easily be able to tell that the information we have, when we can tell where people were on 9/11 on a U.S. Air Force base We can tell who invited them. When we tell you that, you know what information we have.
Well, it's
open
astounding.
mic, guys.
It's astounding.
We're having a bit of a mic issue, not unusual.
Any other bombs you want to drop here, Gordon? Because you're unloading today. This is a hot program. This is going to go out everywhere.
This is all we needed to get out, and we needed to get it out because once it's out, it can't be put back. And getting this out is of risk, more others instead of me, frankly. But and poor Edward Snowden will never be able to come home again. I hope he's learning Russian. You know, we want to thank him.
Well, if Chip's still with us, perhaps he could elaborate on the Pentagon and the taking out those budget analysts, etc., and claiming all the documents and records had been destroyed when in fact that was not the case.
Chip's not with us here. I tried to drag him in. He had said earlier he wanted to join us the last minute, and he got back for a minute, but he's not on with us, and I've tried to call him to get him.
Okay, because that's a fascinating point all by itself. I mean, a lot of us had figured out that was the purpose of having them brought together in the West Wing, which, of course, was the one wing of the Pentagon that had been renovated. They called it the catcher's mitts. Even Kevlar was being used to ensure that damage wouldn't extend beyond the West Wing, clearly for the purpose of setting things up, arranging the scenery for 9/11. But the fact that all that information was in the mainframes and not merely on the computers that would have been available, that's a fascinating additional detail of considerable significance.
There are no computers in the Pentagon other than laptops that have hard drives, and no computer in the Pentagon has a USB port. There are no disk drives on any computers in the Pentagon. There are no ports that you can plug anything into. You can't take a drive off something. You can't plug into anything. And however, there are laptops. None of this involved laptops. Those computers are mainframe, secure mainframe only on an end-to-end connection within the Pentagon, and they are EMP protected, and they are way, way, way underground.
And this, of course, is obviously to preserve the security of the Pentagon records so that no one could have easy access or be able to just walk off with a bunch of data on a laptop. I think it makes perfect sense, but it also reveals the depth of duplicity about the Pentagon officials who, of course, helped to bring us 9/11. It couldn't have been done without the cooperation of Donald Rumsfeld and others, including the neocons who were in prominent positions in the Department of Defense.
Well, figure how many reporters from the New York Times, Washington Post have had sources within the Pentagon for years and years. Some of these guys worked in the Pentagon. They all knew how the computer systems worked there. They all knew exactly how they work. I can describe it exactly. I know Chip can. I can have other people come on and do this. But all of those people in the media pretended that they didn't know what they knew. They never asked a single question about this, any at all. And, and frankly, I've never looked into the things you have. I'm just reading off a document. You've got the number 36. I've got the number, they list 35. One of them may have been a real accountant, actually. That's
yes.
what we're getting. One real accountant actually was killed.
Group, I believe, did survive.
Well, they show records of 35 having been killed, and they're criminal investigative service people under UDP with the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and that's who they were. And your records show them to be listed as accountants.
Yeah, or budget analysts, or working for Booz and Allen, who would have been involved in reviewing, Pentagon financial records and all that.
And I showed them to be members of they're employees of all of the United States Navy. They're a criminal investigative service under the Joint Chiefs of Staff. But these were all Navy personnel, is what it says here. That's what my records say. And
well, that's interesting. That's certainly not my impression. I rather believe that most of them were civilian employees of the Department of Defense. But if they were all Navy personnel, it would be easier to cover it up. It's not obvious how many actual victims there were at the Pentagon. I mean, it may only be those who were designated as targets by Rumsfeld and Cheney who were actually killed on 9/11.
Well, Navy investigators are all civilians. All criminal investigation service people are civilians. You can't be in a military rank structure and work as a criminal investigative in a criminal investigative capacity within the Department of Defense. All are civilian.
I might throw out Dynacorp is my understanding of the original because of the party that broke the original investigation on this. And Dynacorp was the accountant for that, I think roughly 2 point something, whatever, is almost $3 trillion missing from 1991 to 2001. They were also missing in 1997 or 1996. They were missing $60 billion out of HUD. Dynacorp seems to be the accounting division of the U.S. government these days. And, of course, if you run back to it, you'll find them over in under Clinton. You will find them over causing wars in Bosnia and different places and trafficking in children. And I think if you look at Dynacorp, it goes right back to Daddy and the Israelis.
Well, I share a number of employees with and relationships with Dynacorp. Where if you work as a military contractor, you work with Booz Allen and Dynacorp fairly extensively, and that's on a personal basis. And frankly, the Israeli company that manufactured the jammers that were picked up on 9/11, and if you'd heard this, Jim, that was in this hour, but that Israeli company is a working partner of ours, an equity partner in our company. They own stock.
Gordon, let me ask you this. How disillusioned are members of the military over the fact that the NSA raw data goes directly to Tel Aviv? To me, that's one of the most disgusting aspects of the entire situation we're in today, where these Zionist forces have so much control over our politics, our military, our foreign policy.
Well, the issue is more this, that it's raw data from the NSA, meaning it's unfiltered information on individual Americans, mind you, that should normally be covered by privacy. And a federal judge couldn't even see this material, but it goes unfiltered to Israel. And the issue is, rather than military, it's that it's a massive amount of commercial information that allows for manipulation of the stock and commodity markets within the U.S. The issue is that the NSA is listening in to all of the stock trades, all corporate documents. They are intercepting corporate documents that would allow insider trading or market manipulation, and that information is going to Israel. This is always about money.
Why isn't Wall Street creating an uproar over this, Gordon? I mean, it compromises the integrity of the entire financial system.
Did you just say financial system and integrity in the same sentence?
I guess that answers the question.
Yeah, there is no integrity in the financial system. And, it's all a rigged game. And if you understand who's rigging it and how, as many do, you will always make money in that system. And one of the things I love about having this kind of not insider information, but knowing the kind of crooks involved, is I always do well in the market.
Gentlemen, thank you. This is the end of our show. It's Monday, September the 22nd, 2014. This has been Veterans Today Radio News Report. Have a good day.